the Western capital will not allow Africans to develop except we depart radically from their ideologies, from their values, because the ideology of the West is to continue to enslave other developing nations politically, economically, and even for cultural infiltration. All these gay movements, all this appeal to gay status is all part of the destruction of the cultural affinity that binds African communities together. So on one hand, it is the crisis of its history, wherein the leaders have been unable to break away from the shackles of neocolonialism and continue to be the apron strings of Western capital. This is more prominent in Francophone countries and also embedded in Anglophone countries. So the question is, who are those radical leaders that will break away and develop a template, indigenous templates, that will focus on the resources of Nigeria to develop Nigeria, just like what the Asian Tigers did, what India is doing, and what China did. Now, beyond the history that continues to be our albatross, because we've been unable to break away from that shackles of domination, is also the peculiarity of the structure of Nigeria itself. The kind of federalism that Nigeria operates is such that it has not been able to create a kind of sense of belonging, to the various groups that form Nigeria. So you have a federalism that is not balanced. You have a federalism that is unitary in terms of contents. You have federalism that continue, to create a kind of injustice where people continue to agitate for a better deal. So unless and until we look into this structural imbalance and try to, reconfigure, the federalism that we have today based on, the powers of government, these are the federal, states, and local government. For example, when you look at the legislative list, you realize that the center is overburdened. It has about 68 items on the legislative list, whereas for the concurrent list, there are 12 items. And because it has been overburdened, it is impacting negatively on good governance, on how powers should devolve on the basis of equity and justice and fairness, and how to bring governance down to the grassroots. For example, you look at the issue of fiscal federalism. That has been the basis of agitation by disgruntled people, by people who are angry. That look, especially the Niger Delta agitation, look, we are the goose that lays the golden egg. And at the end of the day, you see, the federation gets the chunk of the resources. And the argument has been, look, let there be a rearrangement of this lopsided fiscal federalism so that we have a balanced one, whereby states will be in charge of their resources and they will only pay royalties to federal government. So this kind of imbalance has continued to create, disenchantment, fueling, agitation, and even uprising. Even the Igbo agitation, the IPOD agitation is based on perceived marginalization, perceived injustice, because to them, the structure of the country is such that it is tilted towards a particular majority tribe, and there's no sense of belonging, despite the fact that the Constitution tried to provide a template of distributing the resources and portfolio of this country along equitable lines, the federal character system, the federal character principle. So that's part of the crisis of the structure. That's that today, the kind of fiscal arrangement we have is not justiciable and also not sustainable, because where the resources come from, especially the oil resources, is such that those places continue to remain degraded due to exploration, and they don't even have control over their resources. Beyond that, it's also devolution of powers. Like I said earlier on, there are about 68 items at the exclusive legislative list, which makes the federal government to have more than it can chew. So the argument is, look, let's devolve power to the states and local government so that power will now come to the grassroots. The people at the local level don't feel governance. Everything is centered at the states. The issue of state police is part of the agitation. Look, you cannot police this country, solely by federal institutions. It is not possible. States must be involved. Local government must be involved. There must be community police. So this structure, whereby it's only the center that takes care of the security of this country, is such that it cannot function. It cannot secure this country effectively. There must be a kind of devolution of such powers to the extent that state police must, come to bear so as to make police, very, very, easy, policing very, very easy within the states and local government cycle. Because as it is now, the governors don't really have any power over security outfits. They take instructions, at the center. It's a kind of command control. So where governors are not, particularly involved, in developing the necessary policy and framework for policing the states, how can you effectively, protect the citizens? Because security is one of the most important bases of governance. So we come to that issue of devolution of powers, which we need to look into if we have to have a balanced federalism. Then, among the crises also, part of the challenges that we have is the issue of settler indigeneity conundrum. You see, Nigeria is such that we are so diverse, we are plural, and yet there is no integration. So it is difficult to govern a country that is divided amongst its people. It is difficult to govern a country where people's allegiance, are primarily for their tribes and their religion rather than for the states. So critically, when you look at it, there is no Nigeria. What you have is Yoruba Nigeria, Igbo Nigeria. Peoples tend to support their tribes, give total allegiance to their tribes. And that is why when portfolios are being allotted, you find that there are agitations by different ethnic groups. So the issue of ethnicity over and above nationalism is one critical area that continue to impede the progress of this country. Because people don't even believe in Nigeria. They believe more in their tribes. And their allegiance, support is always for the tribes and religion. And you could see the furor that came out of this Muslim ticket for you to understand that, look, this is a country that is so divided, and the leadership is not doing anything to promote integration. So without integrating the people, how do you move a country forward? Because this country itself is divided against itself. So added to the issue of integration is the crisis of settler and indigeneity principle in this country. Now, you realize that Hausas will be living in Yoruba land for so many years, yet they will not be accorded indigeneity status. They will still be deemed as settlers. The same thing. So we begin to ask, if you come to Kaduna State, for example, you go to Sabongari local government, just outskirts of Zaria local government, you have close to 60% of that population being Igbos. So we begin to ask questions. These are Igbos that have invested heavily in this area. Why can't they produce the chairman of that local government? Why? The moment an Igbo man wakes up and wants to contest, the entire thing will turn into a tribal fiasco. So you begin to ask the Hausas that are living in Ibadan. There's a Hausa quarters called Sabo in Ibadan. The settlement is over a century ago, it's over 100 years ago, where you have close to about 1 million houses in that area. And yet, they cannot produce the chairman of Ibadan North local government. So you see the crisis, they've been there for close to 100 years, and they are deemed to be settlers. So how can you run a country where people don't have a sense of belonging, where people will live and die in that place, and they will still be seen as a foreigner? So it's all, borders to this question of lack of integration. We should have gone beyond that. The laws, the constitution, of course, gave out the template that the moment you are in a particular place for more than 5 years, you are deemed to be part of that place. But you see, as it is in Nigeria, of course, that's textbook theory. But the practical aspect is that people are not willing to assimilate, accept other people in their enclave. And we could see how the crisis played out during the labor, union, politics, to sort of the Nigerian Labour Congress politics in Lagos State, where Lagos is being deemed by the Igbos to be part of their place, and Yorubas are saying, no, Lagos cannot be a no man's land. So these are problems that our leaders, refuse to address, because they know that a united Nigeria is an antithesis to what they stand for. A united Nigeria is such that it will crash their predatory instincts on Nigeria. A united Nigeria will break the monopoly of the irresponsible reactionary leadership class. And apart from the structure of the country, part of the problem also is the irresponsibility of the Nigerian political class. The Nigerian political class does not want to lead with responsibility. So in Nigeria, we have leadership without responsibility. What even happens is that in Nigeria, the political structure has been hijacked by a leadership class that has turned politics into a merchandise, to the extent that you cannot participate in the variant of the Nigerian politics without amassing money, because politics itself has been turned into an enterprise. So they invest money in politics, they win by all crooks, and wrongful manner. They rig elections, they buy votes, they manipulate the electoral umpire, and they plant themselves on it with so much money. And credible Nigerians, visionary Nigerians are alienated from participating in the political process of their country because it is rooted in too much capital. And we saw it.
Okay,
just a few months ago.
Yeah, we're hearing you, my dear Prof. Okay, I get you loud and clear. I'm going to be asking you 2 or 3 specific questions. Number one, you mentioned this issue of state police and all that, and Bola Ahmed Tinubu, one of the greatest agitators for state police. What do you think he's going to do about state police now that he's president? What do you think is going to be the outcome, and how will this present government perform? What do you think of the list of ministers that have been presented to us in this last 1 week? And then finally, what do you think is the solution to all the matters that you have described as our challenges? This issue of monetization of politics, this issue of our leaders not being too concerned about the poor, this issue of people not being allowed to effectively participate in politics, and so on and so forth. What would you recommend as a solution? So I don't know if you want to note them. I've asked you 4 questions. The first one is state police, and what do you think should be done, and what do you think Bola Tinubu will do about state police, him being a primary agitator of state police? Number 2, we've been presented with about 48 ministers and ministers of state. What do you think of that list of ministers, and so on and so forth? 3, how do you think this present administration will perform in terms of responding to the yearnings of Nigerians? And then number 4, what are the solutions to most of the things that you have described as Nigeria's problems and issues with our politics, ignorance of our people, monetization of politics, and so on and so forth? And I just want you to address each one by one, like that, so that we can then go on to the next set of questions before we open the floor for people to ask other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The issue regarding state police, I think what the president should do is to dust out the APC report led by former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai. There's a report on restructuring, and state police is part of the, solutions that were advanced by this group in terms of recharacterizing our own federalism. But of course, a lot of lobbying needs to be done because there has to be a kind of constitutional amendment for this to be effectively carried out. The last constitutional amendment, unfortunately, did not incorporate these very vital components of a balanced federalism. So I think there's still time for Mr. President to still pick up that document and probably create another committee to look into the issues raised in terms of its workability, how pragmatically these things can be done in phases, so that by the time the necessary constitutional amendment is made and also the statutes regarding the police administration is also overhauled, then I think we should start thinking about having state police. But I must say that there are reservations by some people that governors, as presently constituted under our democracy, are so powerful. They act like emperors. The moment you allow them have control over security by virtue of state police, they can use it, to advance their own selfish cause. They can use it to harass, intimidate, and cajole opposition parties. And because of the fact that our politics have not matured, these are, issues that bother us on reality. Yes, because of the fact that our politics have not matured effectively. But you see, the problem is that our own politics do not have public accountability engraved in it. People don't ask questions. People don't challenge leaders. People get overwhelmed by leaders. The charisma of authority overshadow people's ability to challenge, act as check. Beyond the parliament, sovereignty also lies with the people. So we ask ourselves the questions. Demand.
Okay. Are you okay? You look like you're frozen.
He's frozen.
Okay. Jimmy, do you have his number? Can someone call him?
I'll call him. I'll call him now.
His network is not strong enough.
Yeah, Alaji, you were frozen. Maybe you want to turn off your camera so that we can hear more. We lost your audio for a while there. You were frozen and we lost your audio.
I think it's frustrating.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can see me now?
Yes. Yeah, we can see you, can hear you. Please go ahead.
So that is that for the issue of state police. Now, coming to the ministers that are supposed to assist the president in the discharge of his functions. To my mind, I think that close to 50% of them are recycled old politicians. Somebody who has been a governor for 8 years will now call him back to come and become a minister. Somebody whose 8 years or 4 years as a governor did not record any significant progress for his people. So that's the problem with Nigeria, with the leadership class. This concept of maximalism, everything, you monopolize everything. So at this point in our history, we need vibrant young men. We need people that are creative, people that are geniuses, will work assiduously out of sheer enterprise to bring us out of these doldrums. But when you come to recycle old politicians, tired politicians, fatigued politicians, who did not perform well while they were governors, and you bring them back on board at a time that the economy of this country is highly and hugely challenging. At the time that poverty is so endemic, at the time that we need to bring in the best, to lift this country out of its present morass. So to my mind, except for a few people, I think this list of ministers is nothing but food for the boys, as is always, the nature and character of the Nigerian political class. They hold on to politics to benefit their class, not for the provision of welfare and protection of lives and properties of the people. And from the steps being taken by this administration, you know that there's a problem. This is an administration that the president talks before he sits down to evaluate. This issue of withdrawal on oil subsidy is not something that you do by fiat. You have to sit down with your team, bring in the experts, analyze, evaluate, and do this withdrawal in phases so that, the consequences will not be too harsh onto the people. So you can imagine the loss of purchasing power of the masses. And look at the issue of the naira against the dollar. The president just made a pronouncement, and thereafter, the pronouncement, as he has deemed it, is not providing succor. The naira continues to depreciate. So I think the president needs to sit down with his team, experts, professionals in all aspects, how to bring this country out of this morass, because Nigerians are tired of exercising patience. Nigerians have been patiently waiting for good governance since 1960 up to now. Nigerians have gone to the last stretch of their elasticity points. And if care is not taken, there will be implosion, because the poverty level in this country is unacceptable. And that explains why you are seeing migration. As of today, when you look at the intelligentsia, the academia, virtually the best are moved out of the country, because the intellectual crisis in this country is such that it cannot sustain the lifestyle of average academic, where you pay a professor less than $300. So how do you instill dedication? How do you instigate or provoke research and development? In any country, the intelligentsia provides the policy framework for this country. Researchers, now they have been undermined, they have been criminalized, they have been made worthless to the extent that they don't have a say in terms of policy formulation for the advancement of the economy, the polity of this country. And we ask President Bola Tinubu, what is your panacea for industrialization? This country must industrialize. We can't continue to be consumeristic forever. Do you know how much we spend on importation of food for the past 6 years? About 8 trillion naira. Nigeria, we are consumeristic. We are not productive. Nigeria used to be an industrial hub in those days. Lagos, industrial hub, Ibadan, Gusau, Kaduna, Onitsha, Ikeja. All those countries have died up. What is government doing to trigger industrialization, especially in the area of agriculture? It is only when there is industrialization that you can think of mass employment and productivity and creating wealth for people. As it is now, because we are consumeristic, we consume foreign products. What we are doing is to create jobs for foreigners and to also create wealth for foreigners. For example, in the area of aviation, Nigeria spent close to $1.2 billion for international travel, and you hardly have a Nigerian airline. In 2022, Nigeria spent $1.2 billion, and no Nigerian carrier benefit from this bazaar. So which means foreign airlines like Emirates, British Airways, Lufthansa, they come in, take our money, endanger capital flights. We create jobs for their people. We create good economy for their people. So unless we sit down, this liberalization policy this liberalization policy that we're talking about does not mean that you have to exclude Nigerian contents. In fact, you have to give it priorities because Nigeria is a disadvantaged state. For any kind of trade we do with other countries, we're disadvantaged, despite the fact that we have the resources needed. Our crude is being stolen every day. Our crude. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, a vessel full of crude got missing. I mean, we can't run a country as if it's a criminal enterprise. So I believe that the key to our problem, our sustainability, is to enact or create or provoke an industrial revolution in all aspects of life, especially agriculture. You come to the north, arable lands everywhere. What is government doing? Of course, we all know that there are development banks that are created to enhance this industrialization policy. But do they give these loans to the people that really need it? Bank of Agriculture, Bank of Industries. Who are those that can access this loan? It is the same members of the political class, right-wing, conservative, backward political class, who collect the loans and go and buy houses in Dubai. And there's no sanction. AMCON said it. Few Nigerians held on to close to 30 trillion loan that they refuse to pay, and they are too powerful. So there's no sanction regime. So a country that is run based on rule of man, not rule of law, cannot survive, because it means that there's no order, there's disorder. What we call obesian condition, where might is right. That is not civilization. So I think the president said he's going to hit the ground running. Now, what are the parameters that have been put in place to convince Nigerians? None, unfortunately. Haphazard policies, flip-flop policies. And the subsidy issue is such that the government is punishing the poor because it cannot eliminate the work of enemies of the state. It cannot arrest them. It cannot sanction them. They've become so powerful, government within government, and therefore Nigerians must suffer. So when you talk about solution. Now, how do we galvanize the people to take charge of their democracy? Because this democracy alienates them. Democracy for the people by the people is a ruse in Nigeria. Democracy, government of the people by the people for the people, is a ruse in Nigeria. We know how the political class have hijacked this democratic process, have made it commodity to be purchased by those who have money. So if you don't have money, you're excluded. Political inclusivity is absent. So when you have mercenaries in politics that are taking charge of our politics and economy, how do you extricate this power from them and make it people-centered, people-oriented? That's the question. Because our people are so poor, and indeed, government deliberately made it so, weaponization of poverty. They are so poor that they only can think of how to extricate themselves from this modern-day slavery. So what do? First and foremost, there's a need to mass educate Nigerians. As it is now, close to 40 million school-age youth are roaming the street across Nigeria, majority in the north. Look at human resources being wasted. So it is the interest of the Nigerian oligarchy to make sure that people are not educated. Because the moment you are educated, you challenge impunity. The moment you are educated, you challenge your rights, where it's been taken away from you. The moment you are educated, you develop a sense of analysis. Nobody can bribe you to vote. Nobody can buy your vote. But because the masses are largely uneducated, to the extent that in the north, they've made it an acceptable value, lack of education. They even ask you, they configure the psyche of the people to even applaud lack of education and poverty as God-given. So when you have a problem like this, where people have been conditioned to accept poverty as a natural cause of events, you must break that shackle. You must break that chains, liberate them by giving them education. Because it is the interest of the reactionary class, not to educate the people. Because they know people will demand for accountability. People will demand, how their sovereignty is being handled. People will demand how their commonwealth is being handled. Then, alongside lack of education, it's also the weaponization of poverty. A poor man does not understand anything except food. So when you have debased a human being to this extent, when you have devalued a human being to this extent, it becomes, a chess for you to be played with. It becomes a tool, and his leaders will come according to exploit. And the danger of this is that when leaders fail, they go back and tell their people that it is the other tribe that made them fail. If a house leader fails his people, he will not admit failure. He will say it is the Igbos that sabotage his regime, vice versa. That's how this country is being run on an irresponsible political, manipulation and Machiavellian style. So solution. First, progressive must regroup. Progressive. Because the larger chunk of those in charge of this administration, power and leadership are from the backward, reactionary, conservative political class who embrace the most atrocious nature of capitalism that produces exploitational tendencies, destruction of humanity, crowd people into submission, exploit their labor, and trample upon their rights and dignity. Now, progressives must come together, form a political platform, because these political parties are vehicles of ascension to power, not vehicles of promoting the interests of the masses or giving welfare unto the masses or protecting the dignity of the masses or for creating civil order. In fact, civil disorder is beneficial to the leadership class because they can pilfer from money appropriated for defense. So the progressive camp in this country, be there in the academics, be there in the polity, be there in the bureaucracy, civil society must regroup, come together, form a burgeoning political party upon the basis of capturing power. The youth are there as our tool.
Who is going to drive this process, Prof? Prof, who will drive this process? Who will make this happen? In the last dispensation, Patutomi and a few other people tried to come together to do what they call the big tent. I'm not sure they quite succeeded, even though Labour Party emerged. Who is going to bail the cat? Who do you think will be able to drive this political process that will emancipate the people as you're talking about?
The Patutomi movement is a pointer, is a starter. But the problem with most Nigerians, even progressive, is that they want power now. No. What we're saying is that we should start the mobilization, sensitization, promoting, a viable alternative. We might not capture power within the next 4 years. It might be an agenda for 8 years. Look at Muhammadu Buhari as an example. Look at his efforts at capturing power. It was not just in 4 years. No. He tried all he could and forged alliances with other parts at the end of the day. But the unfortunate thing is that that movement, betrayed the hope and trust of the people because they are not genuine, progressives. So people like Prof. Patutomi and like-minded people should look beyond themselves. It's a process. When you look at history, political powers, especially when you wrestle it from despots, has only been a process. Museveni in Uganda, before he became a despot, it is a process. The Rwandan example is a process. But in Nigeria, it's only the conservative that continue to group and group. The progressive hardly do that because they're always in a hurry. No.
One of the challenges, Prof, that I have heard about this issue of bringing people together is the cost of it. They say it costs an awful amount of money to be able to move and drive a political movement. And most of the people who have this passion and this interest most likely do not have the money because they've not had access to state resources with which the state political actors are presently using. A lot of state resources are going into this thing. I know a lot of politicians use state resources to drive their own political ambition. How do people raise this money, or what is your thought concerning this?
That is the psyche that the conservative class always want to implant in the minds of people, that you can't do politics without money. People can galvanize. The revolution in Kano, present governor of Kano, Abba, he doesn't have a dime. When Shekaro became governor of Kano, he was a retired civil servant. Buhari did not have one kobo. So what we're saying is that we appeal to the sense of responsibility of the masses, especially at this point in history, where hopelessness is coming in, where helplessness is coming in. Revolution is about, engaging people to understand that what is at stake is beyond the superficiality of currency. No, it's about their country. It's about their generation. It's about generations yet unborn. But it's part of the destruction of the minds that the reactionary class have put in the minds of the people, the fear that everything is about money. We have seen a clear example, a clear derogation from that. I said Kano as an example. Even Oyo State, how much did the market give people? People rally around. How much did Sowolu give people? How much did Upper Gida give people in Kano? At the federal, all we need to have is sincerity of purpose. That, look, we have to be patriotic to the cause of this country. We have to salvage this country. We have to have an engagement, a romance with history. When you look at revolution all over the world, intellectual revolution, I'm not talking of armed revolution, intellectual revolution. It's about appealing to the intellect and having people that to sacrifice for the people. So the moment, you see, the problem in Nigeria is that most people don't trust their leaders because they lie to them a lot. But the moment Nigerians can find a leader that they trust, just like what they did to Buhari, the trust element all over the country. Look how they gave him that mandate. So if Buhari, as a conservative class, can galvanize the people, how much more the progressive? But it's not going to be an easy task. We're not going to say, look, we want to do it to capture power now. No, it's a process. Process of intellectual engagement with people, political evangelism onto the people, making them realize their worth and the fact that their degradation is unacceptable at all levels. We saw it. Did our first generation leaders give anybody money? The Awolos, the Sadona Sokoto, the Azikiwe. Look at when they go for rallies, how the masses come out. So we don't have leaders like that anymore. Committed leaders, those that are patriotic to the Nigerian cause, nationalists, not provincial leaders, not parochial leaders, not leaders that cannot see beyond their noses or cannot see beyond their pockets.
So, Prof, are you willing to be part of this process? Are you willing to be one of the leaders that will offer themselves to be part of this new political process that you are describing? And do you have a list of other people who will be ready to join this process to really try to, over a certain period, help to transform Nigeria? Can you find groups of very, very sincere people? Because one of the challenges I have found from my experience is that people talk a lot, people postulate a lot of politics and ideas, but when it comes to truthfulness and sincerity and serving for the purpose of the masses and not for their own selfish interest, a lot of people fall short. What is your thought on this? And are you willing to be one of these people to offer themselves for this role that you're describing?
I agree that at times people just use the progressive slang to get to power, and when they get to power, they show their true colors. I agree. I've been part of the progressive movement in this country for the past 30 years. We started Progressive Action Movement, PAM, by the grandson of Awolowo, Segun Awolowo, Femi Fani-Kayode. But when Obasanjo invited them, they capitulated. We formed that progressive camp. Dankofa Umar, Colonel Dankofa Umar was our chairman. So I agree that at times, this progressive, identity politics is always a ruse or a vehicle to capture power. And when people get what they want, they display their real color of not being progressive. But still, there are inherently progressive inclined people in this country. Pardon Tommy is one. Dankofa Umar is one. There's so many of them. And we're still talking. I agree. The issue of logistics is there. But we in ASU that were used to forming, strong labor resistance, we're used to that. So I agree that I should be part of that because my learning or my leaning is for the progress of this country. But it's a Herculean task. It's a tough task because the level of materialism that have eaten deep into the minds of people, is very huge. It's enormous. And it is deliberate. Capitalists will create an artificial economic condition and will turn everything into a commodity so that you spend your entire livelihood looking for sustainers. It's a deliberate ploy because Nigeria is a paradox. You have so much money to sustain the frivolous and opulent lifestyle of the leaders, and you don't have enough money to pay people, to pay the salaries of lecturers. You see? But they create a facade of artificial economic progress. I'll be telling you that, look, there's no progress because it's artificial. But the resources being used to fend for the few members of the privileged class so that you spend your entire life looking for sustainer. You see, the consequence is that you will not be bothered about their misrule. So it's a deliberate ploy, unlike the industrial capitalist states, where there's a mix of socialism. When you go to Western Europe today, they are industrial capitalists, but they create employment, they give mortgages for people to buy a house, they give free education, they give unemployed benefits. These are socialism conditions to mix with capitalism, because they know if they want to practice outright capitalism, there will be an end to all. But in Nigeria, our own variant of capitalism is to crush everybody and allow only the leadership core to survive. And that is why we say this country, yes, is working, but working for the oligarchs and not working for the people.
All right.
This country, Nigeria.
Yeah. Well, let's begin to see if there are people who have questions and comments and clarifications and all that and all that. Let me ask you one more question before I hand over. I don't know if Sonny would have any questions for you, and then we'll take questions from the floor. Okay, so do you honestly believe that these progressives that you have described working together over time can actually make a change in Nigeria? What is the step-by-step thing you think they should do? And how long do you think it would take for the impact of this kind of movement to be felt in this great country called Nigeria? Did you hear my question, Prof?
Yes. Now, there are so many progressive in this country. Some are silent because no one is galvanizing them. You have someone like Dr. Tunji Aboyo, that famous Lagos lawyer, who has all his life, promoted the interests and the rights of the people. You have them. So the starting point, like I said, is to reach out with the party autonomy, because they are credible, progressive there. And also, there are silent ones. And we have to look around the universities, especially the academia. You have Professor Jegadia. Look at his service record at INEC. He has gone back to the university and teach. So we have all of them. So first and foremost, we have to go into a recruitment drive. Identify the arrowheads. There is Professor Jidda, University of Maiduguri, brilliant academic, a vociferous defender of the rights of the people, all over the country. Ife, Lagos, admitted they are not limited to the intelligentsia. Even in politics, there are progressive ones in politics. Of course, those ones can be identified. Even in bureaucracy, there are people who have served this country and retired without stealing a kobo. We need to look for them. People who have the interest of this country at heart. So it's not limited to politics or academia. No, the entire gamut of life. Civil society. We need to identify, continue to interact, and coalesce into one big political party that will have a pan-Nigeria outlook. It might sound abstract, but that is how President Muhammadu Buhari started. He formed his own political party. It didn't take him anywhere. He now forged alliance. That's how President Bola Tinubu started in Lagos, Alliance for Democracy. That's how they started. And see how it landed him. He got the governorship of Lagos. So it is not something that cannot be achieved, even though it sounds a little bit abstract. But that's how movements are being created. A step in the right direction will lead to other steps. So it might not be too much of a theory, but that is our only panacea. Because beyond this intellectual political revolution, what other revolution will you advocate for? The next thing will be uprising. And that in itself does not solve the problem of the downtrodden, because you are simply replacing bad democracy with military rule that is an aberration. So it doesn't solve the problem. A bad democracy is as bad as any military rule, because by the time the military consolidates onto power, the next thing is to overthrow the constitution, expunge people's human rights provision in the constitution, and engage in a regime of terror, brutalizing people. So democracy, no matter how bad, is still okay, because you can still talk. Democracy. So beyond military, beyond armed resistance, which itself is not a solution, because you are simply replacing a bad person with another bad person. It is for the people to take up the political gauntlet, exercise their democratic rights by making sure that they support the right candidate for democratic positions.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Pastor Sonny, any questions for Prof? If not, are there any people raising up their hands at this point in time, wanting to ask questions or seek for clarifications?
Thank you very much, Pastor. For me, I don't think, Prof, I greet you.
Thank you.
Well, I think you have spoken a lot about the government. I will allow others that have questions to ask their questions, along the line now, and we can take it up from there. Thank you very much.
All right, Prof.
So we have.
Yeah, is anybody putting up their hands for questions? Femi.
Yeah, we have Femi.
Okay, all right, Tony, can you take it from there and conduct the Q&A?
Okay, Femi Olowe, go on, and then we'll take Olu, and then we'll take Mr. David Bridge. So we have 3 persons. But the way we'll do it, we just it could be comments and questions. So if you will note them down, we'll take 3 people at a time, and then you can respond to either the comments or to the questions. Thank you. So Femi, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, the Prof. Okay, so
good evening.
Okay, so I will start by saying that if we do not know where we fell from, we probably and access how we fell, we probably will not be able to move forward. Now, the progressives that you also talked about, how did they come about this word? It mainly progressives are for the common good. They are for the common convenience of people. I know professors in Ekiti today who went to school just because Chief Awolowo said, or there was a legislation that if a child is caught wandering around the house, not even hawking anything, the parent will be arrested and jailed. Today, their parents were forced to put them in school, and they are professors today. Some of them are old. So this is the reason, and the likes of Awolowo's, those politicians then, we don't really have many of them again today. Why? Because those ones, the Zik, the Sadana of Sokoto, the Awolowo of Yoruba land, they were just for the common good. Let there be pipe-borne water, let there be free education, let there be power, let there be this, let there be that. And when citizens are satisfied, there will be no agitation. And this is what we see in the Arab world today. It doesn't matter who is ruling for 40 years, as long as food is subsidized, desert bread that is common to rich and poor is subsidized, they don't have an issue. So where am I going? So and I also want to take us to 2012, when the likes of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, and Professor Pat Tomi led a particular protest against fuel subsidy removal. And we know today, with the cost, we are still paying it. So I want to believe that even those that are identified as progressives today, some of them at a particular point in time, or some of them can be used by the politician. So my question, sir, to you, Professor, is how do we recognize or detect when politicians are the ones either instigating us or trying to use us to achieve their own aim? Because if this is not well addressed, all the progressives that we may have or identify or form a group and come together, they will also fall into this pit. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. I think primarily when we are talking about progressives, I think what should come to mind, like you said, is those genre of Nigerians who believed in the sanctity and also the fact that this country must be run on the premise of rule of law, who believe that this disorder should stop, who believe that there must be wealth redistribution, there must be inclusivity, there must be good governance. These are people with the idea that everything should be about the good of the common man. Compare them to the person that we know, he lived amongst us. He becomes a senator or a governor. He has 10 houses abroad. He has 20 houses. He has stolen so much from our Commonwealth. So, you see, from the lifestyle, from the principles, from the ideologies that emanate or exudes from the progressive, you will know them. These are people that are not rapacious. They are not prebenders. You know, they spent all their lives extolling or supporting the cause of this country in their chosen areas. So we as Nigerians, except we want to lie to ourselves, we know the right people. But because people mindset have been distorted, people mindset have been destroyed, we close our eyes to good people. Chief Gani Fawe once contested election. This is a man that has gone to jail so many times on behalf of the poor, on behalf of the downtrodden. But the poor did not vote for him. Because the psyche of the poor has been destroyed, has been distorted. So, and we know, when we say progressive, we are not saying that a progressive in terms of ideology or its proclivities must be inimical to capital. No. What we're saying is that capital must be earned, not stolen, not pilfered from public purse. There are conscientious capitalists. People like Bill Gates can be deemed as conscientious capitalists, where 70 or 80% of his income is being, used, appropriated for the interest of the global poor. So it's not difficult to identify. We all know them, but it's just that we are not ready. Are you telling me that Professor Popola, the famous Professor Popola in University of Ife Faculty of Law, is not progressive? He's still in the academia, all of them. But how many governors will give Professor Popola appointment? Because he knows that Popola has a mind of his own. He will not be privy towards such changing the people. We know them. All over the place. We've seen public servants that they didn't have even any house upon retirement. We know them. But they can't come into politics because it has been monetized. Where a political party will peg the sum of 100 million naira to buy presidential funds. So why can't we build our own party, People's Party? But the problem is that you have to galvanize Nigerians. You have to be able to talk to them. You have to have a charismatic leader. Initially, Germans did not support Hitler, but because of his oratorial skills, the fact that he could galvanize people for the cause of German nationalism, appeal to their sense of worth, most people key. So we know them. The only thing is that the poor might not support them because their sense of understanding has been destroyed by the conservative class. They've made them to be happy slaves. So the first thing to do is that let us come together. We know ourselves. In ASU, I can tell you, most of the leadership of ASU for the past 20 years are progressives. And that is why when government want to work with academics, they don't go for progressive academics. They go for the conservative academic class. Check out the history of ASU's leadership for the past 20 years. They are progressive. People who stood firm for the cause of intelligentsia. But I agree. Politicians are clever. When they want to work with academics, they will go and pull the conservative class academics. They won't go and pull the progressives. How many government will work with Asisi Asobo? How many government work with Professor Escotoyo before he died? How many government work with Dr. Bola Usman before he died? How many government work with Chief Ganifa before he died? How many governors will work with Dr. Tunji Abayo? How many? Because they know that these are progressives. They are there. But it behoves on us to the group come together. If General Buhari can do it, we can do it. But it's going to be a movement that will go through some, historical dialectical process. It's not something that, will become instantaneously successful. No. Because we are looking at the larger picture. And history will be kind to us. That at least we started this intellectual revolution, intellectual political revolution. History will be kind to us.
Okay, let's take the next set of questions. I have iPhone. I don't know who you are. You need to unmute your, let us know who your name, rename yourself. We'd like to know your name. Otunba Bimbashiru would like you to take your question. And after that, Olu, my friend and my son. All right. Olu, you go ahead. Then we get Otunba Bimbashiru to take the question. You are welcome. All right. Go ahead.
Dear Pastor, sir, thank you very much. Thank God I could chip in a joke. I think that the Prof has answered my own question, and I was going to come to him for that. Learned Prof, you said so much good things about professors and all of that, about them being progressives and conservatives. For my own personal knowledge, I would like to know the difference between conservatives and progressives. I'm a member of Conservatives Party, and I think that I also believe in some exercise of rights. So I don't know whether I'm in the wrong party to be a conservative. That's number one. Then number two, you answered in a way, but I'd still like to put the question there. Now, since 1993, the first time that I had any idea of election, we had professors. It was Professor Humphrey Yusuf. And since then, I don't think INEC is independent, so I put it on the chart. The not so independent National Electoral Commission, all right, it's had different kinds of professors, possibly your colleagues. I don't know if you can vouch for any of them, but we're in this quagmire, right? We make a mess of the electioneering process, 350 billion. Yet we can't get one without any issues. So, and then of course, yes, ASU has been doing quite a lot with respect to holding government to account and all of that. Even though I don't know why ASU continue to serve under the precarious situations they teach in the university. My question, sir, is what is the propriety of continuing to have members of the academia conduct elections for us? Is it appropriate that these professors that we have had again and again have not been able to efficiently conduct elections, or should we start looking outside members of the academia? Or are there progressive-minded members of the academia who will deliver free and fair elections to us? Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
I think you should take the two questions together. The last speaker actually brought out some things. Prof, you spoke about PAM. I was one of the founding members of PAM too, when we used to have meetings now. But I like your passion, the way you've been talking. But let me ask a question. I can tell you, and I always tell people, that if they bring Jesus Christ to Nigeria, Nigerians will try to corrupt Jesus Christ. Let's get it right. I mean, we should stop all these progressive, conservative, all these people who are talking about progressive. They are the ones using progressive name to go and lobby in the villa. The ones all people are talking about. I was in the villa recently, I see one of them, and I told somebody, I said, look at this man, he will go out and be saying something else. So what I'm trying to say is that, what medicine, let's get it right. What is the problem? Someone like you are talking now, Professor Dankofa. If tomorrow you are given an appointment, we will see another thing entirely. Changes will happen. I don't want to mention names. One guy that has been appointed now, he was seen as one of the progressive fighting for everybody, but he's doing something else. So my own point is this: what is there a particular medicine that they use when they get to that place? They change because they don't even go for and I think the issue here, let us address it. It's poverty. Poverty. And how do we address the issue of poverty in Nigeria? That is it. Even when we are comfortable and everybody's okay, they will call the bluff of the leader. Somebody who is being appointed minister now, they are going to have a party for him or her, and then the local government, all of them will go there, they will celebrate. And these guys will become. So the issue here is this: let us forget about progressives or no progressives. People have been using that name to rob Nigerians. They should stop using that name. The point is that only few progressives, I will tell you this, Pa Adibanjo, who recently was talking there, the man has been talking constantly, he has been consistent, and is the only Awo that is alive now. So, but let's stop talking about all these people you are mentioning, professor. The last man spoke about the professors for elections. They are the ones that rig the elections. All the elections petition tribunals are there. The professors, university professors, they believe that they are good ones. Where are they today? I think we should I like your passion, but let us forget about how do we address the issue of poverty in Nigeria? How do we resolve it? Because when people get to the villa or become ministers, they change. They can't even get them anymore. They change completely. They will now start defending, saying all sorts of things. So that's my own point, that we should stop this issue of progressive or no progressive. When they get there, they are turned to something else. Maybe they have a medicine or the drug they use there that turned them to something else. So that is the point. So I think that's what we should address. Progressive or no progressive, I'm sorry, they failed us. Yes. I'm sorry, if some pastors have failed us, some leaders have failed us. So that's the same thing. Some clergymen, they failed us, they've collected money, they've compromised. So that is the issue. Let's just stop between ourselves in this country. I like your passion, but at the same time, let us face it. You said some PAM members, what will they do? Will tell financial face of Obasanjo and be arguing with him. He will tell him, I've not seen a Nigerian that resigned based on issue of integrity. They've not resigned. They are talking about Buhari government. They all serve the Buhari government. Nobody resigned. And we are talking about, now people are pitying Emefiele. That's why they treating him like that. Nigerians, they've changed. So we have a problem. Let us focus on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maltuba. Thank you, Maltuba. Auntie Professor Nika Grain, sorry I missed you. Please ask your question. Ask your question so that you can take all three. So, Prof, you're on the hot seat. You have to reply all these questions. Auntie, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, my dear pastor. Prof, we know each other very well, don't we? We have tried to support
my leader.
we have tried to support somebody whom we thought would make a very good president before, but somehow he was dropped midstream. Now, this brings me to the problem of the actual process of choosing a leader goes through a filter which is faulty, because of partisanship. The parties themselves will only choose a candidate that that will serve their own interest. So therein lies a big problem for us. And so they normally choose the candidate that can pay for whatever it is that they want in government, because they are going to sponsor him to get to the leading position. As soon as he gets there, he has to pay back, doesn't he? So there is that problem, Prof. You know it. You actually had to resign from from the organization that you were both in, trying to help to get the correct leader into place. Somebody has said something about poverty. I think it's very correct. Everything is shrouded in poverty. But apart from that, there is a conscious effort being made to sustain a corrupt system. Please talk to that. This money thing that I'm talking about, it's personal to me, because I could see how the person whom we thought would make a good leader was ousted out by somebody who was sponsored to come and take over. Sponsored with a lot of money. And, of course, the money goes to the chair and those who are choosing the leader or choosing the candidate. So, Prof, I'm so glad that you've spoken to us about everything else. The electorate, yes, we need to educate them. After the person has become president, he has to deal with the reconstruction, etc., etc. But the parties that actually choose the candidates for us, they are so, pardon my word, rotten. Thank you.
Prof, are you going to respond to those three questions, please?
Yes, I think I'll start with the first. That this argument where people get classified into conservatives and progressives. I think it's just a convenient way of trying to identify our leaders, that they're divided into two segments. Those who support the status quo that is full of exploitation, and decadence, and they want that system to continue for their own benefits. I think they are reactionaries, right-wing conservatives. Those who want this country to develop based on the ideals that propel development across the world. Those who want to see a country that functions, where opportunities are open to all, a country that is not being run alongside the principles of, entitlement or patronage, but on equity for all. Those who want to see this country prosper in terms of good values, those who want to see selfless leaders who develop this country like we see all over the place. So these are progressives. So the difference is that, conservatives want this status quo to be maintained because ordinarily they will not have had the qualification to be there, if not for the decay in the system. Now, they want the system to continue to decay so that those that are qualified, the progressives, will be edged out. Because these are the people with capacity, with the intuition, orientation, the energy, the synergy to develop this country. So it's just for the most of identification. I agree that there could be some consensus conservative. That's why in Nigeria, I qualify it as right-wing reactionaries. No progressive is a reactionary because he wants the best for the country. He's willing to sacrifice. He's not going to sabotage the country. He's not going to undermine the country. I mean, how do you describe a leader who has been unable to fix Medicare and go abroad and treat himself? Is that a progressive? Which leader does that all over the world? Or a leader that is meant to superintend over people, collapse public education, carries children, study abroad with public fund, the children of the poor cannot go to school. How do you describe that kind of person? Where people are hungry and their money is being stolen to be warehoused or being warehoused in foreign destinations. A person that will connive with foreigners to change his country, to expropriate the resources of the country and endanger capital flights, will steal the country's money, put it in Swiss bank. If he dies, that is the end. How do you describe this kind of people? Do they want this country to grow? They see Nigeria. as one big fat cow to be milked, as if it's their property. But those who want things to be done based on equality, equity, wealth distribution, welfare for all, those are the progressive. Now, you see, the destruction of the Nigerian state has permeated all aspects, even academics, the judiciary, other institutions. Largely, you have an academic that is complicit in the destruction and distortions that defines the Nigerian degraded states. Academics are complicit. Because how many people want to stay in the academia today? Where is the prestige? Where is the dignity of an academic? Do you even respect scholarship? Does the system respect scholarship? So you find the best of our intellectuals all over the world. Professor Greg, one of our best, finest intellectuals. You see Nigeria? Because the system undermines them. It even criminalizes them. Can you imagine? It makes them look like they are criminals for demanding better system of work. Or how to describe leaders that will appropriate the benefits meant for the poor and confide on their own children? How do you describe it? So now, the few remaining intellectuals in the academia, you don't see them with INEC. As a matter of fact, ASU has a standing point, has a standing philosophy. No academic should go there and work for ASU as a member of ASU, and work for INEC as a member of ASU. No, you go there as an individual academic. It's a policy from ASU. Because ASU has always taken a position against this bad governance. ASU that continue to agitate and declare, industrial action against a government that does not listen. How can it also, as a matter of policy principle, go and assist a system that will not work? How come Professor Jega did well? How come if they are looking for progressive academics, they will not call Professor Adenike Grant? How come? How come they will not call Professor Chuko, Professor Popoala? How come they will not give Chief Adebanjo advisor to the federal government? Please, you're a wise old man, advise us. We like your principles. You have been steadfast. You have been consistent. How come? So it is real. The distinction between the conservative and progressive is real. Even if for nomenclature purposes or definitive purposes, those who don't want this country to succeed, it is clear, the leaders. Because how can you be in government and you continue to appropriate the resources of the state for yourself alone? Look at what is happening in the legislative houses today.
I think you're frozen again. Let me call him. Mr. President, he's frozen, so I'm going to try to call him.
Call him, and then also let us have some of the comments on the platform.
They give themselves, some. Look at.
We'll overcome this technology one day. Do we have any other questions? Maybe we should just take those questions and note them while we are waiting for him to come.
Yes, I have my hand up.
Dr. Boyo.
Yes, sir.
And Auntie Fumi Ajayi Tomori, please ask your two questions. Ask your
Thank you.
question.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Boyo. I heard the speaker talk about. Am I echoing? Okay, I heard the speaker talk about the need for progressives and people that are nationalists to get involved in governance. At the same time, he made it clear that it's very expensive. And we also heard ourselves say that Padutumi another big tent and it couldn't go far in just like that. But the question really is the way the country is constituted and the 1999 constitution is difficult for a group of people to run an election in this country without, like what the speaker said, Buhari tried. Buhari didn't succeed because of the very good agenda. Buhari succeeded. I'm not talking about Buhari's government. So the process of becoming president meant joining hands with other people across the country. And this is what weakens the progressive link. For you to win an election, you need to win 2/3 of 36 states and the FCT. And the process of getting votes in all these places is very, very difficult. It has been said that poverty has been weaponized. You cannot really campaign effectively except you build a basis from the ground. And we have seen it. It doesn't happen that way. We build the basis. We have the progressives, or we have what we call nationalists everywhere. They change. Where's Okeowo today? Where are the people that led in 1788? Ali must go, and we all look like we're going to change Nigeria overnight. Where are they? So my question is this. Is it possible to build a base on integrity and honesty without compromise and really get the 2/3 of 36 states and Abuja and win a majority in a country where poverty has already been weaponized? That you cannot really campaign without spending money on adverts, campaign without giving people. You will talk. People will wonder. In fact, the people already believe that if you don't have money, you cannot rule us. But you have to have money. The question is simple: how can nationalists, I don't call them progressives, how can nationalists be able, with integrity and the fear of God, be able to mobilize themselves in various states and zones in this country to win the national election? By the way, let's also look at state governments, even local governments. As small as state governments are, when I mean small, I'm talking about in terms of territory and population. We don't want to have someone like Taisho, and if he was alive today, they won't win Ogun State. If Gani Fahimi was alive today, they won't win Ogun. Why? It's not because he's not popular. People don't like in popular elections. So it will take a lot of energy, a lot of teaching, and changing our perspective as citizens. Our spirit of entitlement and the anti-Omoluabi tendencies among Nigerians has already eroded so much of the clout of the progressive in terms of campaign of nationalists. One of these people that have money, even if you have a church and you are poor, how many will come to your church? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No society ever solve all its problems. We are talking of a phase of a movement. And if we continue to emphasize on the shortcomings or the challenges has been too enormous to unburden or to overcome, we will never kickstart that revolution. And to my mind, it's easy to capture the minds of Nigerians, especially through the clergy. Why do you think politicians always run to clergymen? Because they understand their influence. If the progressive can align with pastors, imams, we have one pastor in Godalo who is a progressive. He's here. There are other pastors that are progressives that want this country to succeed. We have other Muslim clerics. And the moment these clerics appeal to their adherents, honestly, you'll be shocked at the kind of support base that you would have created. So we can use what people think is a disadvantage to become an advantage. The role of clergy in the development of the Nigerian political culture is a book that we're working on now, because they are so influential. Any notable politician that will want to win elections must pander to them, must seek their support. Now, all of them recognize that politicians are not doing well. And they're not looking for money. Most of them are materially successful. So these are the kind of people we should forge alliances with. There's Pastor Bakari, Tunde Bakari. When you listen to his sermons, very progressive. He's politically conscious. There are many others like that. You know? So I agree that the problems might be there, but honestly, it's about getting the right people within the right locality to appeal to our people. We understand the sentiments of the North. How do we appeal to the poor, to the masses, the downtrodden? Through their clerics. The South, there is the religious segment of the South, the elites. How do we appeal to them? How do we now reconnect with ourselves? There are going to be molds. Our camp will be infiltrated. But history has shown that if we remain committed, continue to galvanize ourselves and expand the frontiers, you know, to connect with the downtrodden. Because whether we like it or not, there's a vacuum that people always overlook in this country. The yearning for credible leadership is something that Nigerians are yearning for. Both members of informal and formal class. And that is why Nigerians don't trust their leaders, because of their past experiences. Where leaders can be trusted, they will galvanize the people. So without attempting to solve this problem, we'll continue to fold our arms. We'll continue to remain captive, and which means there's no solution. And the problems will continue to, you know, deepen. Now, how do we reverse the poverty condition in the North? Mass of huge human capital being wasted. How do you connect with them? That look, you are a bundle of human resources. Now, how do you make them see value in education? It's a process too. Because even if progressives should get to power and the people are not educated, there will be a disconnect. So developing this country goes beyond, you know, ascending onto political power now. No. The progressives must also, as a mark of concurrent effort, in fact, we must multitask. On one hand, we are building a political party as a structure or vehicle to attain power. Two, we are making efforts to enlighten ourselves and break the yoke of poverty, and demanding that government should try and provoke a kind of industrialization, productive activities. The shoemakers of Aba, the automobile industries of Aba, the agricultural, you know, terrain of the North, the industries of the South. We must demand that even before we come to power, what is the position of our opposition as progressive in this country in terms of taking up government, not in terms of undue criticism, but criticism that will add value for our people. So even beyond capturing political power, what are we doing to stem the tide of this problem? How do we feel? Millions are disempowered. Millions are not educated. So if we of this jury cannot come up and salvage this country, who will salvage this country? Is it the plutocrats, the wealthy in government, that have seen politics as a means of acquiring wealth for the purpose of dominance and continued exploitation? Are those the kind of people that think will service this country? It is me and you, progressive. So we must eschew all the bitterness that's around us. We must close ranks. We must look beyond ethnicity and tribalism, except if we don't want this country to succeed.
Okay. Doc, let's see if we have any other questions. But Jumoke, you are going to give us some of the comments on the platform.
Yes, and we have a couple. I'll just read them out.
We still have 4 people.
We still have 4 hands up. So one of the questions from the platform is, we have seen a lot of brilliant academics and progressive that changed once they have access to power by getting political appointments. Don't you think the issue is with the system that does not encourage being good and efficient? That was Umar Yakubu. Then the second one is, how can intra-party corruption be curbed in order to overcome the challenge of getting the right potential candidate to emerge for state or national leadership? So I'll stop with those 2 because there are still 4 hands up.
Okay, so Prof, do you want to answer?
Yes, please, the first question.
Yeah.
The first question, please.
The first question is, I'm just going to, don't we think the issue is with the system that does not encourage being good and efficient?
Okay. You see, like I said, how do you expect people to support you when they know that you as a leader, you are not responsible? As a leader, minister, you don't come to the office until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. The money is meant for the benefits of the staff, get preferred. You don't lead by example. So where people lead by example, people will clean. But where people refuse to lead by example, people will help them. We help our leaders. If our leaders today should lead by example, basic, or observe and obey traffic lights. You see a commissioner of police or a DPO refusing to obey as something as basic as common as traffic light. You see them bullying people on the street. So how do you expect people to respect that leadership? Don't you see what leadership is abroad or other countries? When leadership is all about the welfare of the people, of the masses. So the problem is that when we get to position of authority, they don't show good example. I've had cause to be in charge of political authority, and I can tell you that before I go to that office, people don't come to work. When I go to that office, I'll be on my seat by 9 o'clock. Gradually, people started cleaning. I don't leave office until 5. Nobody goes. So you see, that's what I'm saying. Leadership with responsibility is absent in this country. You see a minister with about 7 cars or 10 cars in the convoy. Wastage. How do you want people, to embrace? You can imagine you seeing your minister, going home alone in his private car, no public car. Don't you think that people's perception of you will change? People will now start to embrace him. So we see leadership position as an avenue to enjoy prerequisites of office, the perks of office, not for the work. And the moment you give somebody leadership authority, like you said, he becomes inaccessible. He becomes an emperor. They forget that it's called to service. It's called to service. In Nigeria, leadership is not called to service. Leadership is a basis for you to display arrogance, to take control of people's lives. So what am I saying? People will start respecting leaders when they see them doing the right thing. Then the issue of intra-party problems. You see, like I said, Nigerian political parties are nothing but vehicles being used to attain power. It's not built on any ideology. That is why there are always problems, crises. Now, if we want this country to move, we have to establish a party system where the rules of the party, the constitution of the party, internal rules based on the principle of democracy will work and function. So when there is rule of law, everybody will have a sense of belonging. But where a party is being manipulated by some cabals, what do you expect? Rule of law is being jettisoned. Nepotism, cronyism is being promoted. So what do you expect? So the problem is bad behavior from our political class. That's the basic problem. They see Nigeria, as a captured nation for their own interests alone. That's the way they see Nigeria. So to follow any rules, to obey any norms, if it's not going to favor their self-interest, it's not going to work. And because
don't be afraid of my friend Miguel, he just looks scary. He's got nobody. You're growing up on him. Afraid. Solid.
Prof, continue, please. Let's mute. Prof, please continue. Unmute him. Please unmute yourself, Prof. You are muted. Unmute yourself.
Because there's poor sanction regime in Nigeria, impunity thrives at all levels. No consequences for bad governance. No consequences where leaders, do what they like. No consequences. And since people know that there's no consequences, that's why people themselves, do not support the system. People themselves sabotage the system because the system has not created a legitimate means for them to thrive. And Leto Krumah said it. He said, a bad society criminalizes people. To change people is to change that society. A bad society criminalizes people because it makes people to become criminals because legitimate opportunities for them to thrive have been foreclosed against the people. So how do you now make them responsible people? Social justice. People who don't commit crimes abroad, not only because of the law, but because the system has been fair to them. Leaders lead by example. So there's no reason for them to commit crime. And for those potential criminals, they know that there will be consequences. They will get caught and get punished. So two-pronged approach. I'm not going to commit crime because the system has been fair to me. I support the system. Or if I want to commit crime, I know I'll be punished. So I won't commit crime because I don't want to be disgraced. But in Nigeria, no, we don't have honor. We don't have merit system. Criminals are the leaders. So how does the system reward good conduct? A soldier that dies in active service, his wife will not get any benefit from the system. How will the next soldier, how will he sacrifice for the state? A policeman will die on duty. His wife will die on the queue waiting for his pension and entitlement. What kind of country are you running? So how do you expect people to support the system? Because they know that the leaders engage in massive corruption. So all avenues wherein they'll be able to extract income through legitimate means have been foreclosed. What is there left? To undermine the system. So it is unimaginable for a policeman in Europe to collect bribe because he's well paid and he's secured. And there's a sense of patriotism. So people that have been ostracized, have been taken away from the benefit of the country, how do you expect them to develop a sense of patriotism to the Nigerian cause? How? That's why people are not patriotic to Nigeria. State does not educate you. State does not give you energy. State does not give you power.
Okay. You are muted, sir.
No.
He's frozen.
He's frozen again.
Yeah.
Okay, Jumoke, do you have any comments, any other questions you want to take so that we can
State does not do village class. Today,
go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Go ahead.
You may want to turn off your camera, sir, so that we can hear you, because I think your bandwidth, you keep freezing. So maybe if you turn off your camera, you have more bandwidth.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, but your camera is still on. You just...
Let him go ahead.
Okay.
We're more frozen. Go ahead, sir.
So, like I was saying, how do people support a country when that country has left them, without doing anything for them? How? That's what I don't understand. How can people be patriotic? Because in other countries, people are trained right from their youth to be patriotic to the country because the state supports them in all ramifications of life, in all aspects of life. People are proud of their country, but in Nigeria, our leaders are albatross. So until we find a leader who will live like the Balarabe Musas, like the Latif Jakandis, serve the people, didn't get one thing from the state, but the joy is serving the people. Muhammad Goni, Sam Mbakwe, those journey of leaders, where are they today? Where a governor will be the richest person, and we are looking at a senator will be the richest person within our locality. They will be moving with massive wealth, yet the vast majority of our people are pauperized. That is African political culture for you. So how do you expect people to follow them? How? Look at the streets. Look at the number of beggars, number of destitutes. Look at how many people are looking for many jobs. Go to the airport and see able-bodied men forcing themselves, to carry people's bags. There's no job. People graduate in this country and stay jobless for as long as 10 years. And not that there are no jobs. See the scandal that is unfolding every day. They sell these jobs to those who have the money. I mean, the scandal is everywhere. National Assembly, look at. You find 75 million naira in the account of a crony of a leader of a parastatal. 75 million naira. Collected money from the poor who have to sell their belongings to seek for employment, and yet there is no employment. So now I'm asking you, if a Nigerian should pay 1 million naira to be enlisted to the custom, would it sabotage the nation? If a Nigerian should pay 1 million naira to enter the police, will he protect anybody? He will kill you if you don't give him money. Just like politicians who will recoup their money spent, the same thing with anybody that pays to get appointed or employed in public service. So look at the roads, and we are looking at these things. Look at the road. Who will bear the cards? The same progressive. Now, we probably are not comfortable with that names. Who are they? We must identify them. I can say Pastor Bakari is one. I've never met him, but from his preachings, from his support, from his sacrifice. But if he comes out today, Nigerians will probably not vote for him. So we should change our mind and look for people like that. We have them. It will be fallacious, it will be hypocritical to say we don't have them. In our families, in our place of works, we know people that are steadfast. We know people that have sacrificed. In this country, we have seen poor people, like taxi drivers, returning forgotten money. We know them. How many times have we applauded those taxi drivers, giving them national honors? How many times to encourage them? We hear stories of houseboys seeing lost money, returning to the police or their owners. Do we ever applaud them? People work for their entire life, their entire productive life, as street cleaners, as laborers in hospitals. Do we ever give them any honor? So there's no merit system in this country. We only honor the crooks.
Okay.
Until
yeah, go ahead, sir. Let's just begin. Yeah. So what I would like you to close with, sir, are there still people waiting to ask questions? Yes. Charles
Yes.
Obi, Ellen Estienne, and Auntie Fumi Ajayi Tomori. Can you please ask your questions? Then I'm going to ask our guest, our speaker, to close with response to those questions and specific things that we can do. I know that he's called for this movement of sincere people, like-minded people, progressive, and all that. Aside from that, if there are any other 2 or 3 things that can be done to begin to cause a change in Nigeria, it would be nice to listen to it, and then we can close with his closing remarks. So please, Charles Obi, Helen Essien, and we'll start with Auntie Fumi Ajayi Tomori. She's had her hands up for a while. Then Charles Obi after, and then Helen Essien. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Pastor. Please, Professor, you've covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate it. The point is that for about 60 years, Nigeria has been abused. So a mountain of all these problems. And the interesting thing is that you are warning that instead of military coup, a people's revolution, a people's resistance is better. We better note all the immorality in the society, all the illegalities in the society developed over 60 years. So we need a mass movement to be able to tackle these problems. I want to ask, I didn't hear you talk about 1999 Constitution. Is it still in our best interest? Number 2, I want to ask, almost $800 million, is it 800 million or billion dollars has been stolen from Nigeria over the past 50 years. It was covered in Tom Mbeki's report one time. It was 600 billion then. It has increased now in recent times. How do we recover that? And it's not restolen again. Number 3, I appreciate your observation, and also the Emir of Sanusi. I was reading yesterday's Sahara Reporters, and he was arguing that people must come out and fight for their lives, for their survival. Now I'm asking you, Prof, you should be able to be in a position to mobilize good leaders who have character, who can lead by example. I rest my case.
Mr. Charles, please go ahead with your question. If we don't have Charles, can we have Helen?
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so thank you very much, Prof, for all that you've said. As he was speaking, I mean, it was what was exactly on my mind. But I want to say that I have a problem with the term progressive. Who is a progressive? if you're doing something that doesn't make Nigeria better than before you came in, then what's progressive about what you're doing? I think rather we should be looking at somebody who puts Nigeria first. We should have a kind of national orientation whereby everything we do, we ask ourselves, am I putting Nigeria first? We want to go to war. Is Nigeria going to benefit from it? Am I putting Nigeria first? There's money that is lying fallow in the office. Am I putting Nigeria first? That should be our value system. That should be what we should be talking about. There ought to be a kind of national reorientation, which starts from our children. I keep saying that we have to catch them young, because for older people, I think they have done their best, and probably their best hasn't been good enough for Nigeria. We have to start with the young ones. We start from primary schools. We begin to tell them about patriotism. We begin to tell them how to put Nigeria first in everything that they do. And that will go a long way. Like they say, your attitude determines your altitude. When we begin to change people's attitude towards things in Nigeria, we'll see a better crop of leaders. Now, what happened to all the leaders that were trained in NIPS Kuru? What happened to them when we're looking for ministers and commissioners? What happened to people like that? We all of a sudden, we hear names that we've never heard before. And then just before they walk into the Senate to be confirmed, somebody sends them a message and says, oh, we've changed our minds. Because there was really no basis for nominating them. What happened to those people that have been properly and intentionally trained? What will happen to people like us who've been a part of this ALG series of seminars where we've learned so much? What will happen to people like us? Nobody ever thinks of that. So I think that we should find a way by which we'll begin to have a reorientation of Nigerians, and also a group, a place where we can pull people that we can, employ as leaders of Nigeria. So that's my little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask my question now?
Who is that now?
This is Charles Pastor Ichwa.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'll ask Stephen to ask his question, then our guest will answer, and then we wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Good to see you. Just like Dr. Gray said, we thought we could get somebody who can implement some of these things we are discussing here today, but unfortunately, the Nigerian system, as it currently stands, did not allow him temporarily. Well, I wanted to quickly suggest, since you talked about democracy and all those building blocks of industrialized or civilized societies, in a democracy, everybody knows their part. The voter knows what they are supposed to do. The person running for office knows what they are supposed to do. But in our context, the Nigerian system, it appears that sometimes, more often than not, we forget the role of our upbringing, the traditional value that where we all come from, how that plays into what we do today. There's a lot of pressure on the people who get elected by their kinsmen and kinsfolk to say, hey, whatever you do, don't forget your home, don't forget your city, and so on and so forth. That plays into the results that we see in each of these people. So now as we start talking about progressives and conservatives, I said there that you can be a progressive and still have conservative views and vice versa. The reality is that how can we do exactly what the great JFK was saying, which is put the country first, put the people first. I think that's the core of what you are suggesting here, Professor Dankofa. How can we do that as a people without sacrificing our core beliefs and our principles? And in fact, my direct question to you would be, if they offer you a position in today's administration, would you take it? If not, why not? And what do you think?
Yeah, Stephen, ask your questions, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Pastor Itua, and good evening, sir, Prof. Amici once said some time ago, I think when he was a serving minister, that we steal because you people don't stone us. And people keep asking, the people holding Nigerians to ransom, are they up to 10 million is there no way there can be a database made of these individuals across the different sectors of the economy that are holding Nigeria to ransom? Secondly, the Christian-Muslim relationship is something that you have alluded to, where we have in certain quarters that there is a movement or a campaign or an agenda of the Islamization of Nigeria. How do you react or respond to that, sir? And then finally, the fuel subsidy being removed, people have mixed feeling about it. However, we know that some of the money that were made claims to actually were made claims to without the product being supplied or some of these funds diverted. Wouldn't it have been better for the Tinubu administration to have gone forth to see how they can apprehend these criminals and retrieve the money rather than removing the fuel subsidy, in which the people themselves are obviously the victim of some of these policies? Thank you.
All right, Prof, can you respond to those questions and then give your closing remarks? Thank you. Is Prof still there, Jumoke? Is he still there, or is he's gone?
I think we may have. I think we lost him. He's no longer. He's coming back in now. His audio is joining. His audio is joining soon.
Do you remember the questions that were asked? You might need to.
Because we don't have his audio for some reason. Okay, his audio is in now.
Okay,
yeah. Welcome back, sir. Yeah, let me ask him to mute. Okay. Okay, Prof is back in.
Okay, so can you just summarize those questions for him and ask him to bring?
Yes.
Did you hear the question?
Yes. One,
okay.
I mean, I didn't say anything about the 1999 Constitution. How functional and effective has it been towards, deepening our democracy? At the beginning, I mentioned the crisis of our federalism, which is basically a constitutional issue. And I spoke about legislative items and how it has sort of overburdened the center. And a corollary to that was my advocating for a kind of devolution of power, the issue of settler indigeneity, the ethno-religious issues, and the power to be devolved to local government, state police, and the independence of the judiciary. Yes, people continue to argue that the Constitution, especially its federalist nature, is not really balanced. It's unitary, as opposed to a balanced federalism. And that is what has led to agitations for various cries of marginalization and the need for restructuring, especially the issue of fiscal federalism. I agree with all those agitations. And I also alluded to the fact that the APC has a document, written by the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai team, on restructuring and what they feel needed to be done. But of course, some of this will need constitutional amendment. I advise that look into those documents and see how it can, engage the parliament for the purpose of looking into these issues that have continued to agitate the mind, the tilted nature of our federalism, that power should devolve down to the center, and that federal government has no business I think I made mention of that. Then, yes, Nigeria has been turned to a rogue state by its leaders as a matter of enterprise. Because which country are you going to take 800 billion right from independence to these dates? Major capitals of the world, use them to rebuild other countries and leave your country in a state of perpetual agony. So you see the nature and character of the Nigerian leadership class. That's why we deem them irresponsible. And we must always also look into the nature of winner takes all of our political system. And the fact that those institutions meant to act as check and balances mostly become moribund, become passive after election. How many state of assemblies in this state, in the state of this country, challenge their governors or act as a check? The National Assembly, how many times do they act as a check onto the executive? So the very important institutions of democracy, they're supposed to stop abuse of power, most of the times lay redundant. They are very passive. They are laid back. And what happens? Those who aspire to become governors also manipulate the system to make sure that they plant people that will support them in the National Assembly. In the northern states, they make sure that they put people who cannot distinguish their left from right into the assemblies so that they can be challenged. At the level of National Assembly, the kind of politicking that goes on, the kind of manipulation as to who becomes leaders of the parliament so that they can work in harmony with the executive. We are not saying that there should be no interdependence. We're not saying that. We're not saying that they should antagonize one another. We're not saying that. But where the executive is trying to overreach its bound, where its action is ultraviates the law, where its actions is in excess of the law, it behoves on them, to act as a check. Because the other arm of check and balance is the people, sovereignty. So how many people even understand or knows that they have the power to recall a parliament? How many people in this country? They don't know. So it is important that we look critically into our democracy. This is not democracy. All the necessary ethos that make democracy, an all-encompassing positive political phenomenon are absent in Nigeria. Citizens' participation. Where is citizens' participation in Nigeria? When vote buying is endemic. Where is citizens' participation? Where at the level of political parties nomination, people get nominated. People get to win primaries through godfatherism. So where is the sovereignty of the people in this entire process? People are detached from this democracy. So this democracy is being run by a cabal for the interest of the survival of that cabal and not for the people. It's a ruse. If this democracy is to be working, then most people in governance will not even be there. But we have a facade as a democracy. Because citizens' power is absent. The power to vote on election day. Infrastructures to develop the voting process or to enhance the voting process. Technology that should be brought to bear to enhance our political process is even being antagonized by the courts. When you go to court, the court will tell you that electronic voting is not in the Constitution. When they can make laws, Supreme Court make laws Because judgment of Supreme Court, of course, is a law. When they can look into emergent situation, emergent conditions. So even to bring in technology to enhance the integrity of the process is a big problem in Nigeria. So what kind of democracy are you talking about? This is not democracy. It's civil rule. But we have to develop its imperfections. We have to solve its imperfections. It's still better than military rule. Because democracy, at least you have larger participation of the people, even if the system gets manipulated. But under military rule, you have a few band of marauders that hold the nation at ransom. So how do we get out of this quagmire? How do you get out of this, degrading conditions? How do we use this vehicle, democracy, to uplift our people? We have the resources, both natural and human. But like somebody said, the system have been so bastardized that good ideals hardly can flourish. So something needs to be done about our value system, because it's only in Nigeria that people hardly can agree on what constitutes public good. In this country, people cannot agree on what constitutes public good or what is objective. In this country, we can't agree on who is a credible candidate. We can't agree on who is a saboteur. It's only in this country that people don't go through any process of leadership training and they become leaders. You can't become prime minister of the United Kingdom without going through some form of leadership training. You can't become a leader, president or senator in the US. You don't go through some form of leadership training. But here, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can become a governor, can become a minister. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry has no training, has no leadership culture, has not imbibed any that leadership culture, does not understand the sacrifices needed to instill growth and development. So it's all part of the problem. We don't have a democracy. Our leaders are not united on who should be leaders. The followership are detached. They're excluded from participating in their government because is that not why colonialism is being seen as a human rights infraction? Because the locals are never involved in decision making that affect them. It is the colonial overlords. So in this age, the people do not participate in any decision making that affects their progress and welfare. It's only a few band of political mercenaries masquerading as leaders.
Okay, Prof, thank you so much. Can we just have your closing comments and then we'll go just one 30 seconds what you want to leave Nigerians with so that we can close.
Yes, I think I will really want the media to start playing an important role in enlightening the people. The role you are doing now, what you are doing, is very important. And I think also that some of these, media chats should also be done in local languages for the locals to understand. Yorubas, Igbos, Efiks, try and create a program.
I think Prof has hung again. Well, I think we need to bring the meeting to a close.
We are local,
Prof,
a lot of Nigerians are yearning for leading Nigerians. You said?
Go ahead, sir. Take 15 seconds left.
Yeah, so also the clergy too, the church and the mosque, honestly, we have a role to play in coming to defend our people, because our people listen to them. Pastors, imams, people listen to them. People follow them. They have a role to play in shaping the minds of the people to do the right thing. You know? So beyond this, because if politicians are not doing the right thing, before the progressive come on board, then the media, the clerics, they have an important role to play because they have huge constituencies. Then teachers too, that mold students, right from primary and secondary school. You know, we need to admonish teachers too. If they teach well, their student will imbibe the right values, the right education, because these three institutions are critical towards national development.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. You've done well. I think people are clapping for you. They're quite excited. And we're going to be getting in touch with you and help you to we'll be looking forward to you driving some of these things that you are so eloquently positioned today or posited today. Thank you so much. Jumoke will call you. We'll arrange a one-on-one meeting and then we'll take it from there. Let me thank everybody who's been on the platform today. We've gone a bit longer than we intended to. I guess it's because of all that Prof wanted to say. So thank you so much for being patient with us. We'll try next time not to be take so much time so that people can get on with everything. But Bossa is clapping. People are clapping for you, Prof. Thank you so much. We pray that we can find capable, competent, and I use the word sincere Nigerians who are going to walk the talk and make it happen. God bless you all. Have a good rest of the evening or day or morning, wherever in the world you're in, and have a lovely weekend in Jesus' name. Thank you, Jumoke, for everything. Thank you, Mr. Debi. My brother, how are you? How's my sister?
Thank you, everyone. Watching us.
Thank you.
Good.
Sunday Adelako, thank you so much. Marcela, the Washington, the Biden, how are you? Good to see you. Bambo, I'm in your country. Oh, you haven't come to look for me. You haven't done foundation for me. You are just finding that I'm in your country. I hope you know that. You
Thank you, Pastor.